Good morning. Trying to decide if I want to put my headset on. I think I do. In the name of better audio quality. This side. All right. Now hopefully you guys can hear me a little better than just the microphone from the laptop. Anyways, welcome back to a live Q&A. This is the first live Q&A. I'm going to kill that light, I think. It's violently bright. First live Q&A of 2022. So thanks for being here. Crazy that it's 2022. Happy New Year to everybody. If you're not watching this at the beginning of 2022, still Happy New Year, I guess. Anyway, I have 6 questions that were submitted through those. Before we go through those, I do want to talk about 2022 plans as far as this channel goes, and so like upload schedule and things like that. I just want to give you guys a little bit more of a detailed breakout of some revenue growth and some revenue sources and stuff like that. If you have not watched my How I Grew My Sales by 217% video or my 2021 year in review, like goals in review, go check that out. You'll get the basics of it. But on this, as a little intro, I just want to share that with you guys on the live, just so that you have an idea of where the sales are coming from and some of the other nitty-gritty like growth that happened. But first, I suppose let's talk about this channel and the planned upload schedule and things like that for 2022, so that you have it, so you have an idea of what is going to be going on. I am planning on this year. So last year I set a goal of uploading 2 YouTube videos per month without any like real upload schedule plan, that kind of thing. And so this year I want to be a little more scheduled on and have myself a little more accountable of when I'm actually going to be uploading those videos. So I think that I will, and not I think, I already have it in my calendar, every Tuesday, either 11 or noon, I can't remember. I already scheduled my first upload for Tuesday. I want to say noon, every Tuesday, noon Central Time, there will be a new video uploading. I said on my little goal sheet that I was going to do 3 a month, but I think I'll probably end up doing them weekly, so 4 a month, and then I'm going to try and do one of these lives every month. So I do want you guys' opinion. Would you rather it be beginning of the month or end of the month or middle of the month, so we can kind of get it figured out? Right now, doing it the first weekend of the first month, it's making me think I'll probably do it beginning of, but totally open to suggestions on that. So expect a new video every week on Tuesdays at noon. The first one coming up, I think you guys will enjoy. And it will go live. Like I said, it's already uploaded. It's ready to go. It's just scheduled to premiere on Tuesday at noon. So that is the upload schedule. And as always, if you guys have any video like specifically that you want to see, like a how-to video or answering questions about a specific thing, totally happy to do that. So that's the upload schedule for 2022. That's the plan anyways. The plan's always subject to change because life happens. So I do want to talk about my revenue growth, like breakdown and stuff like that. I got into it a little bit in some of those videos that I uploaded. The first thing that I want to talk about is the overall gross revenue breakdown, like what made up my sales, what made up that 217% growth of my Cricut sales in 2022. And so I have 3 different categories. So I have wholesale, events, and online sales. And so wholesale are any of my grocery stores, any of my third-party stores that put Cricuts on the shelves. Events are any live events. So I don't include any like speaking engagements. I usually take some product to that, but I don't ever necessarily sell a lot of Cricuts at those. It's not my goal. My goal is more education and hoping that that leads to a sale later. But so my live events are things like farmers markets, Iowa State Fair, all of those sort of things. That's what goes into the live events. And then my online sales are just the ones that go through my online store. So my www.jiminycrickets, that's all that entails. So a breakdown of those, like percentage wise, what the sales were generated this year. Wholesale, you said, which is those stores, was 38% of my sales. Events were 34% of my sales, and online was 28% of my sales. So for me next year, growing my online sales is going to be a really big thing. It's going to be something that I really want to do. But I'm pretty happy with that breakout of everything third. So the other thing that I wanted to talk about was specifically that online order growth, because I was a little bit disappointed. Like I said, I set the goal at the beginning of the year to have double the online sales, like double the number of online sales that I did in 2020. In retrospect, like 2020, everybody was shopping online. It would have been probably a little more than normal of people buying things online. So maybe my sales were already boosted slightly in 2020 and I didn't take that into account. But so in 2021, I did want to double my online sales and I failed miserably on that. I only increased my online sales by 24%. But the cool thing that did happen was that my average order value for those additional sales and those total sales was up almost 20%. So while people didn't buy as many times as I wanted them to, they were buying more each time, which is awesome. I think that if I really think through it, I probably need to make that as more of a goal of like average order value being higher, while still obviously growing the number of sales. It just makes things accelerate faster. So I'm still thinking through my 2022 goals. I think that's going to be a few week-long process just because things did not slow down around here until like 2 days before Christmas. So I've not had the proper amount of time to sit and think and just have the space to be creative and space to really take in, okay, what are we going to do next year? So I will be coming at you with 2022 goals for the overall business at some point, but like I said, it's just going to take a few more days, whatever. So anyways, let's get to the questions. And as always, if you guys have questions, please drop them in the chat. Even if I'm mid answering the 6 that I got ahead of time, I generally get distracted and will answer them as I go. So thank you guys for joining. First question is, hi, my question is about the rentability, which I'm assuming this person meant profitability. I was wondering if you're able to make a good profit every month, and if so, what are the dimensions of your farm to be able to raise crickets as a full-time job? So this one, profitability. Good morning, I just started raising crickets about 5 weeks ago. I started with 100 and I've enjoyed watching your channel. Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate that. And hello, good morning, happy new year. So profitability and cricket farming. It took me over 3 years to start to turn a profit on my whole cricket business. Granted, like I was starting from square one. I was not dealing in the live market, which was an already established market, and there is a nationwide cricket shortage. So truthfully, like if you want a faster to profitability plan, something like that, go into the live market. I would still maintain do not start large, but like the opportunity right now is in the live market because those people with exotic pets, that market is not shrinking by any means. But like I said, there is a nationwide feeder cricket shortage. If you are in a northern climate during the winter, most pet stores and places like that are getting their crickets from an external source that have to be shipped in. That creates a lot of problems in the winter that if you as a local cricket farmer would be able to supply them with something that doesn't have to be shipped, like you basically have a guaranteed market right there locally that you can then grow out. I think if I were to dive into the live market, I would figure out and saturate everything around me, which we're not a super high population density area, so it wouldn't be a giant market, but I would figure that out before I could ship. It took me 3 years to get to profitable, but I screwed up a lot. And hopefully this YouTube channel would help to shorten your learning curve so that it wouldn't be as dramatic as mine was. But that's also why, like I said, unless you have experience in growing crickets or growing some other insect, even if you do have experience growing other insects, start smaller so you can screw up on a smaller scale and you aren't just bleeding money all the time. So the dimensions of my cricket farm, of my cricket castle, are I think inside it's 11 by 53. So it's just under 600 square feet. At max capacity, like in peak growing times, which would be the summer, you can probably get between 1 million and 1.5 million crickets in there at once on additional growers, but while I had additional growers growing for me. But what I'm in is the food business. Food business has much, much tighter margins, much smaller margins than the live market. So I definitely think I could have been profitable if I just had my space doing the live market. I don't know though. 3 years isn't bad for profitability. I started making soap about 27 years ago. It took 5 years to become profitable. Yeah. I think that's one thing people underestimate with starting a business of any kind is they think like, oh, perfect. Like I'm going to put my sign out there. I'm going to file all my paperwork. I'm going to start doing all this and the customers are just going to come. I'm going to have this all nailed down. All the business plan, everything I wrote it's going to go exactly as I wrote this. That is never the case. I don't think. I think, and truthfully, like not everybody could endure 5 years of no profitability. Not everybody could endure 3 years of no profitability. Not everybody wants to live in their parents' basement at 30, but it's what you have to do. I think sacrifice for the big picture. So that was question number 1. All right, question number 2. How can I get lower humidity in my incubator? After a few minutes, there's always a bit of moisture on the window of my egg incubator. Do I need to keep the soil with the eggs wet? It's my first time hatching eggs, so I don't know if it'll work. The temperature is about 34 degrees Celsius constantly. I'm really bad at mental math, but 34 degrees Celsius, I think, is 90 Fahrenheit, maybe a little bit more. Not entirely certain. But so how do you lower humidity in your incubator? I am guessing, and this is just me guessing, that you don't have any sort of ventilation in your incubators, which is going to cause problems. Too much excess moisture does not do well for your crickets. You will end up either rotting the eggs, or you will, if you have condensation on the walls, when your pinheads actually do start to hatch, which hopefully they do. I mean, temperature-wise, it sounds like you're doing a good job there. When they start to hatch, they will die in the condensation because they will get stuck. They will die in a droplet of water. They're teeny tiny. They're called pinheads for a reason. They are absolutely just teeny tiny. So my first suggestion would be to create some sort of an air exchange ventilation hole. If you don't want to cut like a hole in the top of your incubator, or you aren't sure what size to start with, you can always like just drill holes. That will possibly take care of the problem. Or what you can do is you can take the top off your incubator and just essentially let it breathe for a few times a day. See if that takes care of the excess moisture. You absolutely, if you get your breeding substrate the correct moisture amount, and now I don't know what you're using for breeding substrate, but so I'm just speaking from my experience with peat moss. If you get it at the right moisture level in the beginning, when you put it into the incubator, there's no reason that you would need to spray them every day. Once you figure out the proper air exchange amount, and assuming that you don't have the top completely off, like it's not going to dry out. It might start to look a tiny bit dry on the top, and that's totally fine. A little bit dried off on the top, especially as you get into the later stages of the incubation period, is not going to hurt anything. I think it's actually probably better than having the excess moisture. But the first thing, like I said, that I would try out is to see if you don't have any sort of ventilation holes in the top of your incubators, you're definitely going to need that, because otherwise, if you're putting that kind of heat on something that is that moist, that is a natural evaporation is going to happen, and then condensation is going to happen on the walls, and it's just a vicious cycle. So once you figure out the balance of what works in terms of air exchange, it'll become very easy, but I know it's really frustrating at the beginning when you start it. I'll pop over to the chat here. Are all Cricut types usable in the live Cricut market? So my short answer on this one is no. Here in the US, there's only 2 breeds. There might be 3, but I can never remember the third. So there's only 2 breeds of crickets that you can legally ship across all 50 state lines live. And so that's the banded cricket and house cricket. Like I said, there might be a third one. For some reason, I remember seeing a third one on the list, but the 2 most common are the house cricket and the banded cricket. So part of the reason is because they're non-invasive species. Part of the reason that they're preferred as like a feeder cricket is the exoskeleton is actually softer. And so similar with human consumption, you want a softer exoskeleton. It's just a more pleasant mouthfeel, but softer exoskeleton is also better for the animals. Lower chitin levels makes the protein more accessible. It's easier for everybody if the exoskeleton is softer. Locally, you might be able to do some of the wild crickets, but again, I think if you're already trying to tap into a live market where pet owners are used to seeing a certain kind of cricket, you would be causing yourself more harm by trying something different, even if it's just locally available. So I would stick to those 2. I would stick to either the banded or the house cricket if you're going into the live market, because you're dealing, like I said, you're dealing with pet owners that are used to seeing a specific kind at a pet store. They're probably not going to be super jazzed about doing some research to find out if a different kind of cricket is going to harm their animal. Personal opinion. How do you measure the moisture level of the breeding substrate? I've been using Vermiculite and it seems to hold no moisture at all. Yeah. Okay. So I've seen a few, and it's been like on message boards and stuff. And I'm wondering if there's like some reptile guide that is telling people that they can use Vermiculite as like a breeding substrate. I don't. Vermiculite, most people I think are putting it at the bottom of their cricket bins and stuff to like suck up moisture and things like that, because I think it's naturally a really dry substance. Not sure. I don't work with Vermiculite a lot. What I use is peat moss. That I end up, the peat moss that I add moisture to I add water. And the key with the peat moss is you get it at a moisture level where when you squeeze it, a little bit of water comes out, but it's not like a river of water. You don't want the substrate to be soggy, but it also has to be moist enough that it's not going to allow the pinheads to completely dry out. I need to get one of those little plant sensors that tells you moisture level, like for a house plant or something like that. I don't think that they are super accurate, but it would give me a more definitive number on what proper moisture levels or good moisture levels would be. So I will work on that. I'm pretty sure I can get some of those off Amazon, so I will look at some point. What is the ideal relative humidity for cricket farming? I see the ideal temperature all the time, but I haven't seen what relative humidity should be at. That was actually one of my questions on my list. And that was actually the next question on my list. Hello, what humidity do you recommend? Thank you. So this is perfect. Perfect timing. So in the Cricut barn, we try to keep it somewhere between 45 and 60% humidity, like in the grow out area for the pinheads and for the incubators, like within the incubators, because we don't have a separate incubation room in our Cricut barn. We like to keep it so 75 to 80%. You want to keep it really high for the pinheads, but not high enough that you have condensation everywhere, because like I said, they will drown in a droplet of water. Does not work very well. But for the grow out room, 45 to 60%. 60% is really, really the upper limit on that, though, because you want to make sure that in your grow out area, you are keeping things as dry as possible, because any sort of moisture, when you're dealing with that amount of frass and that the high enough population that we have the crickets at, you start having excess moisture and you start getting mold problems. You start getting pests that are attracted to moist environments. Like, it's just a problem. That being said, you can't have it be too low either. Otherwise, you are going to start causing problems when the crickets are molting. So I have done both. I have had it too high and I have had it too low. And so, like I said, the sweet spot seems to be 45 to 60%, probably more in the 45 to 55% range. That would be my opinion on what the best relative humidity would be. Are banded crickets consumed by humans or just exotic pets? There are a few, I believe, Entomo farms out of Canada, which they are North America's largest cricket farm. They're pretty big, like 100 million crickets a year or something like that. They do a lot. Anyway, so they do banded crickets. There were a lot of disease problems back in the early 2000s with the house cricket. Everybody assumed it was densovirus, but truthfully, like, unless you're sending a sample to a lab and things like that, you don't really know. So a lot of the commercial growers on the live side switched to banded cricket because they are more resistant to the cricket virus. In my opinion, if you are doing some decent biosecurity practices, that shouldn't be an issue in terms of disease risk. But hey, what do I know? I'm only 4 years into this. The reason that I do not many reasons I don't raise banded crickets and I do Aceta. So Aceta are lighter in color, which produce a lighter color powder. So it doesn't look so much like dirt. I don't like the banded for that reason. The other thing, banded, if you've ever heard their chirp, it is the grossest, shrill, just ugh. And when I was choosing between the breeds at the time, the other thing that I had heard about banded crickets is that they're more aggressive and that they will bite. So I wanted nothing to do with millions of biting crickets. So that was part of the reason I went with Aceta. So yeah, but they are consumed by humans. There's another company about 3 hours north of me in Minneapolis that they do crickets for live market and human consumption. But they do banded crickets as well. But like I said, just not my gig. Okay, that is all the ones from the chat for right now. Next question is, how many males and how many females for breeding? Theoretically, one of each will get it done. But let's just assume that you are like trying to start your own little colony, and let's assume that you are trying to start the colony to feed an animal. So a bearded dragon or a gecko or something like that. I wouldn't start with less than like 100 total crickets, and then don't really worry about how many are males and how many are females. That's not something I ever worry about in terms of the density. It's a question I get all the time. I get it all the time of how many males and how many females. Like, do you separate out the males and females? No, they find a way. Oftentimes when I'm looking at my bins, I will see more females than I will males, just because, especially around breeding time, like they tend to be more active. And I think it's just because they're looking for a place to lay their eggs. But as long as at the time of breeding, you are hearing some chirping and you can see females with ovipositors, they will get it done. They will get done what they need to get done. And it really doesn't matter. So I'm pretty sure I've read this somewhere. Each female cricket only needs to be fertilized once every 2 weeks. So at that rate, like and then she can lay fertile eggs for those 2 weeks at the rate of 5 to 10 per day. So I don't think you need as many male crickets it doesn't need to be a 50-50 split. And like I said, as long as you have some males that are chirping and you have some females that have a fully developed ovipositor, you leave them in there for a little while, let them do their thing, give them something to lay their eggs in. You're going to have pinheads. I can't give you exact numbers, but like I said, that does come up all the time of like, how do you know if you have enough males and enough females? As long as the males are singing and the females are looking mature. I'll give you an example of even when we didn't have the males chirping and it still ended up working. They still ended up breeding. There was a time earlier last year in 2021 where the crickets just weren't, the humidity was way too low because we were at a really low relative humidity here in Iowa. It was a really, really dry spring, and then the crickets weren't getting enough access to water. I had too many rocks in my waterers, and they were not, as they were going through developmental stages where they were molting, they did not have enough water access, and so they came out all deformed. All the wings were like curled up on their backs, so the males couldn't chirp. But like I said, somehow they got it done. The males were fertilizing the females. We ended up with viable eggs, not as many as we normally would, but it did still happen. Nature finds a way, I guess, is my whole point. So don't worry, as long as you have more than one of each, you should be able to start it. But if you're starting a colony, like I said, for a small little colony for feeding some sort of an animal, definitely go with, I would say, at least 100 crickets to start with. And then you're going to need to refresh your genetics. So get some new crickets, probably 3 to 6 months after that, if you're starting with that few. Just my opinion. Okay. Sorry, I'm going to grab a drink of coffee. All right. Have you ever used electrolytes in the water? No, is my short answer, but it is something interesting to think about and look at. Think of it kind of like Cricut Gatorade. I don't know if you guys know this, and most people probably don't unless you are an entomologist. And even then, I don't know if they know this, that animal movements are typically, it's sodium that does that. So like crickets naturally are a source of sodium. The higher sodium levels in the body of the insect, the faster the movements. So sodium does definitely play a role. So it needs to be a source of sodium. In our feed, there's salt in our feed. Not a ton, but there is some salt. I think that using electrolytes in water would present a very interesting experiment that I don't have the capability of running myself. Something to research, though, something to think about. That would be quite interesting to check out, because I have heard anecdotally that a Cricut Gatorade does help them reach maturity and a higher weight at an earlier age. So I think it's something to explore, something that if somebody else wants to go prove it out and then show me the proof, I'm happy to incorporate it into my operation. But no, I have not used electrolytes in water, but it is a very interesting thought. How many eggs does a female lay at a time? Ooh, that I'm actually not sure. I don't know if she's laying all 5 or 10 of those, if she's depositing them all at once. If you've ever seen a female cricket lay eggs, she has this big long ovipositor that probably comes off about an inch off of her body. And then we provide a little cake pan full of peat moss that they crawl up on, and then she burrows that ovipositor into that peat moss, like down an inch or so, and then it almost looked like she's like kneading the peat moss. I don't know if she's depositing them all at once. My gut tells me no, because like she'll do that and then she'll spin around a little bit and then do it some more. So she might be depositing some of them there and then some of them there, so that it's giving them the best chance for survivability. That I don't know. That's a really interesting question. I'm gonna have to pay attention to that. I mean, there's really no good way for me to count it, but might have to ask some people on that one. Interesting question. don't know. She definitely doesn't deposit like the whole 1,000 that she can over her life in one go. Like she's got to generate those daily. Like I said, it's 5 to 10 per day. So interesting question though. All right, so last question I have for today. This one actually came off of Reddit. I had posted to, I don't remember what, like Cricut Farmer asked me anything. And this one, this person is doing feeder crickets. And she said, so I keep my feeder crickets in a cage like this. And it was a link to just like a cricket keeper. So just a plastic cricket keeper. I don't know if you guys have ever seen them. They have these little tubes where it's easier to grab the crickets. They're actually quite genius. They're good. And I give them food and water gel, but within like a week, about half of them die. What am I doing wrong? I feed them this food, which was the Fluker's Cricket Chow, which is fine, and this for their water, which are gels, which I'm not a huge fan of gels, but whatever, if you have them, I think they'll work, but you definitely don't need to go out and spend your money on the gels. There's other watering possibilities for a small at-home setup. I have a few videos on that, and actually that is one of the videos that I think I'll probably end up doing this year, is talking about different watering options, even on the commercial side. So like building out the different waters to show you the examples and how you'd put them together and things like that, because there are a few different options. There's a few different iterations that we've run through, so I just think it'd be an interesting share for people to see the options all in one place. So we had a little bit of a thread go, and I had a follow-up question that said, awesome, like I'm really glad that you have them in a bin, and I'm glad that you are feeding them and watering them. What do you have for housing? Like, do you have any housing? So things like egg flats, things like like any forms of cardboard, toilet paper rolls, stuff like that. And she came back and said, I don't have any housing at all. And I said, well, there's your problem. And because the other thing she said was some of them are like missing heads, some of them are missing half of bodies, so they are cannibalizing, like very obviously cannibalizing, but she didn't have any sort of housing, no place for them to hide, no place for them to congregate. Like, you need to have housing. Housing is super important and is often overlooked, particularly in the reptile space where people just don't necessarily know the basics, and that's fine. I think, like I said, I think that's just one of those things that gets missed in the guides that people are giving out, or it's things that people overlook because it just wasn't emphasized. So I recommended that she add some housing. Told her she doesn't have to use those for waterers. The feed should be fine. But we'll see how it goes in terms of, she's supposed to give me an update on her next round of crickets, so hopefully that sorts it out a little bit. Do you think fitness industry will revolutionize around cricket protein? Short answer, no. I know that my branding is very like fitness oriented, and that's more, I just liked the pun. And truthfully, when I started this, I didn't know what I was doing. And I thought, yeah, perfect, fitness industry, because I was very active and very fit. But do I necessarily think that the fitness industry is what's going to take it mainstream? No, not really. Folks who are really into fitness tend to be early adopters before other people, before the general population, if you will. But I just don't think, I don't know. My gut tells me no, it's not. The fitness industry is not the key. I think kids are the key, truthfully, and families with small kids. I think if you can get the kids eating the crickets from early on, I think that's your way in. Definitely, I think you can get some people in the fitness crowd that will try it out. But I mean, the other thing is too, for a lot of the fitness crowd, protein is protein is protein. If we can figure out some sort of divergent attribute that makes it better than cheaper alternatives. So like, for example, up against whey, like whey is super bioavailable and super cheap. But 60-something% of the world's population is dairy sensitive or allergic to dairy or just dairy intolerant. So cool. Like, can we substitute that with crickets rather than some crappy plant-based protein, or like full of soy-based protein that causes other people other issues because of allergies and things like that? Maybe. I think we are probably too early in the value proposition stage to get there, and we have some costs that need to come down to make us competitive. That being said, with overall food costs rising so much, Cricut protein's starting to look pretty good, right? But no, my gut, like I said, even though I know I have like fitness-based branding, I don't think it's the fitness industry that is necessarily going to drive this forward. I think it's kids and the younger generation. That being said, everybody told me that it's only going to be young people that are going to buy my Cricuts, and some of my best customers are like 50 and above. So my suggestion to anybody who's going to start some sort of like Cricut-based business is sample a lot and sample on like a really broad spectrum of people. So you might have these theories about what you think your target market is, but until you get out there, boots on the ground, it takes a while. It takes time, money, effort, all of those things. But I think that part is really, really important. So just a little recap for those of you guys who were not here at the beginning. I was talking about my upload schedule for this 2022 as far as lives go and things like that. I'm not going to do a weekly live, I don't think. Here in the next few months actually will be when I have weekends available. So if you want them to be weekly and you have questions weekly, we can totally make this weekly in the first 3 months until about April. But otherwise, my goal is to do at least one of these a month, probably at the beginning of the month. And then I will be uploading just on the channel a regular YouTube video every Tuesday at noon. So first one's already uploaded and scheduled for noon on Tuesday, January 4th. And if there's ever any questions you guys have or ideas you guys have for videos of things you'd like to see, please drop them in the comments of one of my other videos or send me an email, any of the above. As always, if you are curious about our actual like end products, please visit www.jiminycrickets.com. And yeah, thanks so much for joining. If nobody else has any questions, I think that I will probably sign off for today. And then, like I said, let me know if you guys want to do this weekly. I can for the first 3 months or so, assuming that the world doesn't explode or that I don't get blindingly busy, which, I mean, it's a good thing, right? Otherwise, I will catch you guys next month on a live, or next week, still up in the air. But come check out on Tuesday at noon. Come check out my new video. It'll be hopefully informational and educational. So, Happy New Year, guys. Thanks for being here. I will see you later.